And welcome to everybody to a Bahrain Grand Prix. This is the intro, and we are at Bahrain 2022, a lovely place in the world where they cook a lot of bread in things which look like ovens but actually aren't. Here we are at the Eagles Hotel. This is where we've sent Peter. No expenses spared this year, although whether or not he actually got the tickets, you can see special places for him there. The greatest assets of Bahrain is, of course, Princess Mia Khalifa, as we all know. And Bahrain actually means the land that rains sheep, in some local dialects anyway. Bahrain. That's a pun on the word Bahrain, by the way. So fantastic. I'm now going to hand you over to. Isn't Bahrain beautiful, by the way? Isn't it? Just lots of building sites everywhere. Reminds me of the East End of London during the Olympics. And there it is. They get kids to play the policeman. That's how much they take that seriously. And as you can see, we've got coffee shops, more coffee shops, pizza places, and coffee shops. So isn't that just lovely? Hand you over now to our team in Formula One. Hey, well, yes, indeed. So I'd just like to say, basically, ciao, el campionato del mondo di Formula 1 in Bahrain recente. Grazie amigo tifosi. Stenta sepulti al Fabio. Grande esperto italiano. Grazie.
Yeah, I think it's the official language right now, right? No, it's before you start. It's funny you said the thing about Bahrain. Actually, one of my kids said, "Yeah, the only reason they race at night is because there is nothing around. So they have to race at night with the lights in your fucking face because there's literally nothing over there. So they got fireworks and shit. But yeah, there's that. So anyway, yeah, nice. That was an interesting weekend.
Indeed, grazie amico tifosi. Yeah. So,
yeah. I mean, it started really good with with Italy versus Wales.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm taking it really slow, because I want to savor the moment. It's been 903 days, so I'm starting slow.
Yeah, speaking of 903 days, thank you, Peter. You were ahead of me there. Thank you. Just say good evening to David Scargill. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us. That's absolutely wonderful. And do you know what I forgot to do? I forgot the Twitch bollocks.
Oh boy.
So I'm afraid we're going to have to do all of that again. Oh dear, there we go. Let me just do it now. And there we go.
You forgot more than that.
Oh no, it's just logged me out from fucking Twitch again. Can't believe it. Oh well, sod that. Okay, so we're not going to do Twitch. Fuck Twitch TV. Yeah. If you don't want to see this show, go to twitch.tv/SimusFunk. Okay, there we go. Lucky Wolf, good to see you. Thank you so much. Jefferson, really nice to have you here. Thank you very much. Gonna go for it. Well, I'm gonna just block him. Somebody block him. Okay, so a couple of questions first. We're gonna start with a couple of questions. K-Mag, what a fucking legend, it says. Yes. Not literally. It doesn't literally say this. Haas will never know if they would have won a title last year if they hadn't let him go.
Well, we know that.
Yeah, and we know they wouldn't have.
At least I know that. Us would never know. I know that. They wouldn't. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Was Nikita in that coffee shop? Don't know. Was Nikita in the coffee shop? Not sure.
No.
Enjoy it while it lasts, Fabio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a long season of it, to be honest with you. They race at night so no one can see. Absolutely slave labor working at construction sites. That's not slave labor. I think you'll find, according to the Bible, they're all Jewish people. But yes. I'm not certain about that. Anyway, that might be a different rhetoric that we're using there. Okay, so I'm just going to go over there and move to my other things because I've got other things going. Okay, let's move on now. Mm-hmm. It was a fantastic race, I thought. If we could just have Fabio as big. Can we get Fabio as big? The bigger? Fabio the bigger? He is, after all, a grandot. Thank you very much indeed. Yes, this is tribute to Ferrari. who of course were absolutely cracking. Not only pole position, but they had pole, led every lap. Was it? Yeah, led every lap, I think. Yeah, I think they did because
Yeah,
Red Bull pitted straight after or just
yeah,
before them.
yeah.
So led every lap and a race of victory, one
Fastest,
and two,
fastest lap
and fastest lap. Oh,
and fastest pit stop. That
oh, we got someone dying in the background.
yeah,
That's okay. Don't worry about that. We're quite used to that. Okay. Sorry, you were saying?
and the fastest pit stop.
And the fastest pit stop. That was most impressive of Ferrari. Uh, of the 4 pit stops, they had like 3 of the
Yeah.
fastest, I think. So
About that, there is a. It's very brief. Mattia Binotto said that the team crews, they trained 1,300 hours before Christmas.
wow,
1,300 hours is about 6 months. If you
6 months.
I mean, if you consider, normal working days and blah blah blah, of course, yeah. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
1,300 hours, and yeah, that was an issue. Actually, they they suggested some modification to the pit stop procedure because they figure out. I mean, it's way more difficult, with the way that the tires. Well, the tires are heavier. They're 24
Yeah, yeah.
kilograms the rear and 21 the front, and also they are more difficult to grab because of the disc.
Diameter, yeah.
So yeah, that was really impressive. Yeah, it was a package win. I gotta say, I mean the strategists in Ferrari on Saturday already they were quite confident. I mean, to be totally honest with you, I think that 1 and 2 was not expected, but surely the dealing for the victory was something which was in the air. It was
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was there.
Absolutely. I mean, like we spoke about this in the review. We both fancied, well, as you know now, I am one of the Tifosi, obviously, and as such, we were both
Of course
expecting.
you are. Yeah.
So, of course I am. Hey, I said something in Italian at the beginning, which
Oh
vaguely
yeah,
made
yeah, yeah.
sense. So there you go.
So
What can I say?
Mercedes is not a British team anymore, and now you're rooting. You've always rooted for Ferrari.
I've always been Tifosi, really.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I just, obviously Toto was paying me too much to say anything different.
Cheers.
But now, now I've been receiving, copious quantities of wine from Matteo Biandotti, tutti frutti, grazie mille. Obviously that's different. Anyway, yeah. So back to the race. It was a really good race. There was a point at which, and I haven't got the review. I'm not going to do my normal review of the race because I don't think it's really worth it. However, I will say this: that from the start, there was a couple of unusual things which happened, which was Sainz and the second drivers, Perez, actually managed to hold their places relatively well. Hamilton made an amazing start, managed to get his car above expected, but then, of course, was soon overtaken. By lap 33, we realised that Ferrari were way out ahead in terms of pace, although they were fairly evenly matched by the Verstappen. Sainz was hanging on in there with Perez on his tail, and then Hamilton hanging on in there again. And I've got to say again, for a very unfancy team, I did think that the British team Mercedes did extremely well considering their state of their car. However, it was clear that the two people that had a pace advantage on big tanks were Leclerc and Verstappen, and then followed by Sainz and Perez. So again, those top two teams, that's what we're looking like for the championship. But it will depend on circuits quite heavily. Okay, so there was an amazing bit in the middle where I think Verstappen was deploying his ERS and his extra power down the straight to make a huge moves on Leclerc. Although Leclerc, the pacey pastry, was very clever with how he responded. Just let Max easily overtake and go deep into the first corner, and then made a cutback in the corner one in order to give him a much better straight speed down the next straight, which was of course DRS as well, and then he was overtake every time. This happened twice, where he overtook into turn 4, having been passed in turn 1, and then on second, it's happened again. I don't know why that keeps happening. And then second, on the third time, Max Verstappen overcooked it. Obviously, his tyres were getting hotter and hotter, and he was running out of power, and therefore he used everything down the last straight once again. Went deep in, locked his brakes up into turn 1. Leclerc was able to pass him, repass him in turn 1, and then never looked back till the end of the race. Whereupon Gasly first blew his engine, which is of course a Honda engine in that, or not a Honda engine, at least an HRC. And then from that, yellow mumble swerve was brought out, pace car was brought out, and that closed everybody back up. Fortunately, just before then, Hamilton had pitted along with Verstappen, but that allowed the two Ferraris to pit and get out in the lead again in the order of Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz, Perez, Hamilton. And then it was on for a last dash last 6 laps really to the end of the race. And unfortunately, in the last 2 laps, first Max's car, which had a dodgy pit stop in the last pit stop where he'd damaged his suspension allegedly, although I think it was probably hydraulics myself. And his steering got heavy. Of course, so few laps to go, he could have coped with it, but then it seemed to affect the engine somewhat, and eventually he had to pull off. His engine cut out, and he had to pull off. And then a lap later, on the very last lap, Perez also had a problem where he spun into the last corner, claiming his engine locked. And that was the 2 Red Bulls out, so they didn't score anything. As a result, we had the race results, which will be coming up on your screen shortly. We had the race results of, in first place, a magnificent lights to flag finish for Leclerc, the pacey pastry, Charles Leclerc, who was awesome in the post-race interview, followed by Sainz, who was very measured, only 5 seconds back, of course, not really counting for too much because of the safety car at the end. And then third place was a very, very lucky Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton was very lucky in third place, followed by George, who actually drove a fantastic race backing up Lewis. And again, very lucky, although they did have the pace over the rest of the field, but nothing like the Ferraris or the Red Bulls. So again, lucky to get third and fourth. And then everybody moves up one. Fantastic race by Kevin Magnussen, who was really the hero of the day, I feel. Late into Formula One this year, hadn't had too much testing in what was objectively the worst car of the season last season, and magnificent 5th place. Delighted for the boy. Valtteri Bottas trying to get up and back up his ex-teammate, of course, Hamilton. He does it out of habit. Actually had a terrible start, dropped to near the back when he got involved in, or I had to swerve around an early contact between Ocon and Tsunoda, and then fought his way back up to 6th place. Not a bad drive considering that car is looking pretty good. Notice those 2 engines, both Ferrari. And then 7th place, of course, Ocon, who was just lucky, I think, despite the early setback, actually drove very well. Tsunoda, again, another one of the only Honda finishing engines, which was great. And Ocon, of course, just drove okay. He was fast towards the end of the race. So, again, he's obviously pretty damn fit. 8th, 9th place, I should say, is, of course, Alonso. Smooth as fuck. He's Alonso, who had a good race with this thing, but dropped back towards the end of the race, ran at a bit of pace. Zhou Guanyu in 10th place, a very good result considering it's the rookies, the first Chinese driver in Formula One to finish in 10th place. And a good race, genuinely speaking, another Ferrari engine to finish in the points. 11th place is, of course, Mick Schumacher, the other Ferrari engine, Again, doing very well considering the car, etc. He was a little bit unlucky. Also, I think he wore his tyres out a little too much and was off the pace in the second stint. Lance Stroll actually just pushing the car, had an average, but average to good drive. Didn't do too much with it, but finished roughly where the car deserves. In 13th place, that would of course be Albon, who is in a Mercedes, and here we come to the woe. Mercedes, Mercedes, Mercedes. They didn't perform too well. Is it the engine? We don't know. Is it the cars? We don't know. Albon 13th, and Daniel Ricciardo, another Mercedes, in a 14th place, although not bad considering his comeback from his awful COVID he had 2 weeks ago, and considering he missed the test completely. So yeah, not bad for him. He survived the whole race. Well done. 15th place is Lando Norris, his teammate. Just had problems, really. I don't think they could push the car particularly hard with the brake issues. They still haven't sorted them out. Hopefully next week they'll at least find something, either by opening up the air because it's Saudi, so they're going to have to, or at least modifying the brake drums and getting them sent over in time. Nicholas Latifi, another Mercedes engine, 16th place. Just disappointing, really, but again, not far behind Albon, showing that Albon is really the measure of the car straight away, which is good news for this year for those that do fancy Albon. 17th place, Hulkenberg, the super sub, in once again because Vettel managed to get COVID. Presumably, he was kissing someone behind the shed. I'm thinking it might be Ricardo. And there, 17th place, super sub. Did what he could with the car, but basically towards the end, the car was just running out of tyres. Tyres may be a theme, I feel, this year. And then Sergio Perez obviously did not finish. The first driver not to finish. He found problems with his engine. In 19th place, of course, someone dear to Peter's heart, Max Verstappen, did not finish. First the steering went, then the engine. And Pierre Gasly, just the engine went, I'm going to say overheated, and there you go. Not enough cooling for him. If you notice, 3 Honda engines all failing to finish there, and all at the back Mercedes engines. So is it going to be engines this year we're talking about? I don't know. But that has been the roundup for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So I just want to throw it straight over to Fabio. Engines, was that the issue, or was it tyres?
Uh, yeah, of course it's tires. Yeah. I mean,
Thank you very much. And there we go, everybody. I've got him to admit it's tyres. That's
Yeah.
all we need.
So no, really quick. The battle for the first, there was some really interesting things. The the Ferrari actually, especially the one with Leclerc. Sainz said that he had some problem with the tire degradation, especially at the rear. He didn't quite always, found the car to be okay with the driving style. But regardless, there was a big distance in the first four car compared to the other cars of the lot. The interesting thing to me is that Verstappen was never in a position to actually challenge Leclerc. He complained about the fact they tried the undercut, and the undercut in that track is really powerful. I think that they made some miscalculation. Of course they took into consideration the fact that the temperatures of the tires are not 100 degrees but 70 degrees by regulation right now when you start. That, I think, brought the undercut to be way less powerful. And we saw when Hamilton changed to the white tires and it was sliding all over the place, really hard to put in temperature. But regardless, Verstappen complained about the fact that they didn't let him, push during those undercuts. He said he would have taken that. I have some serious doubts about that because, even during the race and when he was racing, the pace just wasn't there. It wasn't that much. It was like 10th of a second every lap, but it was there and was consistent. The other interesting thing is, of course, the two times that the two guys battle each other when they changed tires, both, the first stint and the second stint with the yellow tires. especially the first one. I love the fact that Leclerc battled with Verstappen the way that Verstappen battles with other people. That was exactly the tactics he used. He was not afraid of using that. He made a fantastic pass on the outside, cutting the car really clean. But that is a typical Verstappen move. And he just said, you know what? If you can do that, I can do that too. So that I think just upset a little bit Max. He probably wasn't expecting Ferrari to be that fast, or maybe was expecting his car to be better. Maybe they I don't know. But I think it was caught a little bit by surprise. Some other things, really quickly. I love the TV direction. That was fantastic. We saw almost all the battles, in the midfield. That was really, really, really good. We saw some fantastic battles between the us, the Alphas. And oh, by the way, we totally shit the bed last week when we said that the AlphaTauri is the Alpha Alpha. No, the Alfa Romeo is the Alpha Alpha. There is no way around it. But yeah, I mean, it was super interesting. Haas was a super big surprise. Well, I mean, we already saw that in the qualifying, but the pace that they managed to do during the race was really, really, really good. Magnussen was magnificent. Mick Schumacher, I think, this year has got to start deliver. Even if, I mean, he got to the place he spun once. So there is that, because it was touched, I think, by Ocon, I think it was Ocon. So all in all, it wasn't that bad. But I think he's got to step up a little bit, because Magnussen showed the real potential of this year's Haas, which has been designed by, I've got to say that, by an Italian engineer named Simone Resta, which is now working for Haas and Dallara. He apparently made a fantastic package. Yeah, I mean, great. I mean, the engines. I mean, there are 4 out of the first 6 engines are Ferrari powertrains. So that's got to say something. The Red Bull engines, the Gasly basically burned the engine. It was probably the MG UK. And the two Red Bull was interesting, because apparently the fact that they stopped was the same problem, and it was something on the fuel system.
Inside the fuel tanks, apparently, according to Christian Horner.
Well, yeah, okay, so there is something to say about that. I mean, this year they've changed the fuel, and it's a fucking big deal, for engine manufacturers. Red Bull also they're running last year's Honda engine with limited support, and now it's rebranded Red Bull Powertrain. They hired a lot of engineers, even from Mercedes, but they didn't hire a lot of Japanese engineers. Now it's always really, really, really difficult to work on an engine that you haven't built, you haven't designed. So maybe they found themselves, a little bit, with some kind of problems. The thing is that they will have to solve those problems with the powertrain, and with this year budget cap, I mean, I don't know. Also, there is the fact that they got to use 3 engines for all the season. And if one of them explodes, the first race, and the 2 top engines, they just shut down, I mean, that might be, something to think about it, right? So, there is that. Same situation, I think, is for Mercedes, because I don't think that the lack of power that the Mercedes powertrains showed for all the cars, it only depends by the fact that the cars are performing bad as a package. What I mean to say is that, Russell said something on the line like, it's not our engine is bad, it's just, we are porpoising a lot, so we are bouncing a lot, and the car doesn't. Yeah, okay. That might be true, but I mean, all the other cars they really performed really, really bad. I mean, the McLaren wasn't that bad in the tests, and it's
Yeah.
over there.
Well,
Williams
as
too.
soon as they had to open the cooling up, right? I mean, this is presumably what they did. Open
Right.
the cooling up on the brakes, and
Yeah.
they had to do it a lot, obviously. And
Right.
the same with the other package as well, by the Williams, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
that must have affected them so badly. In which case, what are we looking at? I mean, that is not a problem that's going to go away.
Well, it's gonna probably takes time to solve, and
I
again,
think
we
have
have
to
the budget
redesign the
caps.
brakes. Have to
Yeah.
redesign the brakes again, from
Well, which
scratch.
right. So yeah, it's a big problem, and we'll see how they're going to deal with that. Mercedes was super disappointing. I mean, they tried everything, and his brother. They basically reduced the performances of the car, and that's why I think that they also have issues with the powertrain. Because I mean, the max speed was
Yeah,
never
maybe.
there, and especially, well, it's not that much the max speed that you got to look at. It's the acceleration that you got to look at. Now, granted, that car is really, well, I would say bad, but it's really problematic in acceleration. I sent you a video of corners 1 and 2 and corner 4, and there were the two camera car from the Red Bull and the Mercedes, and
Yeah.
Lewis was always, opening and closing the steering wheel, because the car was never going to get the apex of the corner right. So they have understeer, oversteer, understeer, oversteer, and the car snaps a lot. So that, of course, affects acceleration. But still, I mean, the performances were quite bad.
Yeah, it was noticeable they were running a much higher wing as well than everybody else. So again, that's one thing I would say. Maybe I'm grasping at straws there, that I'm hoping that they're using the power to compensate for that. But
Maybe, I don't know.
But that doesn't explain why the rest of the Mercedes
Right.
teams are at the back, of course.
Right. I mean, especially considering if again, the 4 out of the first 6 engines were Ferrari. I mean, of course, the 2 Ferraris, but then you got us and you got Alfa. That that both made some really really good car apparently. Even despite Bottas, they managed to make Alfa because Bottas made a super good qualification, and then he forgot how to start the car. Basically, I mean, I mean, for a second I thought he was starting in reverse. So I mean, fuck the guy. So, but anyway,
Okay.
despite that, it was getting a good pace. So yeah, there was that. But all in all, I would say, but it's not just because Ferrari won, but it was a very nice race because there were a lot of battles. We actually have we can actually confirm that the car can follow each other for longer, which is a good thing, because the duels are the battles are way more dramatic, and there were a lot of overtakes. So yeah, I mean, all in all, a really exciting start for this season.
Yeah, I'm excited, definitely. Especially as we know that Red Bull will get their reliability together, and that's just a matter of time. So it looks like we're going to see Leclerc, Verstappen all the way through the season, which has got to be good. And I just want to reflect before we go through questions from the chat. I just want to reflect on the fact that the first time Verstappen overtook him, when he was re-overtaken, or Leclerc re-overtook him, it was a sensational move, not just a good move. It
Yes.
was sensational. He not only judged it to perfection, but he intimidated Verstappen at the same time by cutting right across the nose of him. Now, any driver is going to look at that straight away and go, okay, he doesn't have any fear about having a crash. And that is the number one rule from the Senna days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oft quoted by Formula One drivers is something Senna said once, which is, if there's a gap and you don't go for it, then you're not a Formula One driver.
I couldn't agree with you more. I really loved how Leclerc raced overall. The guy was always in control. When he had to duel with Max, not only he just race the guy, it was always, and that is something he said after the race. He said that he knew that he was going to pass him, where he was going to pass him, and he never covered too much. The only thing that he wanted to be sure of is to be in the next the DRS detection to be under 1 second, because he knew that it would have got him back.
Yeah.
And that he did it for 6 times, if you consider the first tire stop and the second one. That was super consistent. Now, just to give you a rough idea how much of in fucking control was that kid, in the last lap, he radioed to the box that he had problems with the engine. Leclerc.
Wow.
And then he shut down the communication. He didn't say anything more. He won the race. He got back, and Binotto went there and said, "I mean, what the fuck happened?" I said, "No, yeah, I was joking." That is how much the guy was in control.
I love it. Oh my God. Okay. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Fabio. That was wonderful to hear your breakdown of everything. Okay, so we'll just do a quick couple of questions here. So David Scarkill says, do we know what Red Bull's problems were yet, or was yet? And yeah, go ahead.
Again, the engine problem seems to be related to some fuel delivery issue. Horner said they have to investigate it. They know that they had fuel in the tank. So there was some issue with the fuel distribution. As I said before, this year they're running with E10 fuel. There is a lot more ethanol, I think 10%. And the thing is that the engines run at very different temperatures, and so does the fuel delivery system. So there might be something which they couldn't properly test, or something which they only discover after a full race. I mean, something went wrong. Okay, so
what I heard was that there was a sensor which is encased in a particular gelatine structure, and that gelatine structure was adversely affected by the new fuels because the ethanol just started breaking it down, and then once it had broken down, it then shut down the fuel system and the fuel pump. Yeah. So maybe a sensor or something like that. And that was obviously a third-party system, presumably to do with the sensor for gauging whether the fuel pump is working properly, presumably. They said that happened on both, but of course that doesn't make any sense, because if it's a standard part, then it's the same standard part that all the other teams are using. So it really doesn't make sense. But that's what they were saying, and they were saying that. Hang on. They were chiefly saying that to basically, I think, stop people pointing at the engine as having a problem. But I think Max's first problem with the steering, they then also attributed that to the pit stop and dropping the car, and as they said, tweaking one of the front suspension rods. Now those things don't tweak, okay? So again, I'm suspecting the whole thing's bullshit. I'm saying it's probably a hydraulic problem with the engine, or at least the gearbox, and that's why Perez's back wheels locked, and B, why the Max's engine just shut down. I think it shut down mainly because the hydraulics of the gearbox. But that's go ahead now.
So the only thing I don't know is, and this is something I honestly don't know, I should try to find some info, is if the power steering is actually electrically operated or hydraulically operated. Because if it was electric, I mean, Max also had a lot of problems with the batteries.
Well, no, he said he had problems, but they said it wasn't the battery straight away. No. Max said, I've got a problem with the battery, and then the guy said, no, it's not, Max, the battery's fine.
Well, okay, they also told him that everything was fine with the steering wheel, so...
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, I don't know whether they said everything's fine with the steering wheel.
Oh, yeah, they told him, we can see anything, it is what it is.
Yeah, he said we can't see anything, he just said it's heavy. Is it heavy both sides? Max said yes. they came back and
But
went,
and anyway, yeah,
deal
there
with
was
it.
something. There was, I mean, so the official informations were, the one that you said about the sensors
Mm.
and everything went from that. I agree with you that, I mean, the steering and the batteries, if there were two separate issues, I can hardly see how they can be reconnected to the fuel delivery system. There is also the fact that Perez's rear train just locked down all of a sudden, and that is not what happens when you're missing fuel. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
for
simply
sure.
it doesn't happen. I mean, everybody knows that, right? I
Yeah.
mean, everybody who has a car has remained
Indeed,
without
indeed.
fuel.
That's why I'm going with hydraulics, because the hydraulics affect the steering, they affect the gearbox, and they affect the engine. It depends
Yeah.
on the gearbox. If there's a problem with the gearbox and it's just going to like self-destruct, then
Well,
automatically the electronics will shut the engine
well,
down,
listen,
which is very much what happened to Max.
I hope for them that it was hydraulic, because that
Yeah,
would be way easier to solve rather than if it's something electric.
sure.
So yeah, I just hope for them that it's hydraulic. So
Okay,
yeah,
good.
there is that. But no, but that, sorry, before I forget, I agree with you. I mean, the fact that that they released the car suddenly, and the steering rod just, I mean, that is such a high level of bullshit that it doesn't even compute. I mean, those cars, they jump on on the
Yeah,
on the track.
absolutely.
I mean, especially with porpoising and all that shit. I mean, they're literally jumping all over the place, and if you drop it down, the steering rod bends. Yeah, I mean, no.
6 inches. There you go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Nasty, especially when it's up and down, which they are designed to take stress that way. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so David Scargill then says, Mercedes. Did I press it? Yeah, Mercedes were not sandbagging in testing. Absolutely correct, David. They were
Yeah.
not sandbagging. They were actually trying to get to the root of the problem, although I believe that they couldn't, simply because they didn't have the flexibility with their new design. So they had no idea of knowing whether the upgraded package would also porpoise when it got to Bahrain. And then once they got there and found it was actually worse, then they were panicking.
We talked about that, privately. One of the main issues and the one most surprising thing about the Mercedes package is actually the packaging in itself, and the way, the disposition of all the organs, the engine, stuff like that, in order to have such a shape, it's really mind-boggling. And I told you they get to the point where the car, the shell, not the chassis, the fairings,
Body. Oh, yeah.
they have problems fitting some part of the bodies. I mean, they have heard that was during the test, but they were closing, part of the
Oh,
body with a rubber mallet. I
yeah.
mean, it's really, really, really super weird. And yeah, but I agree with you. They were not sandbagging, and that is an issue. I mean, it's
Yeah, absolutely it is. So yeah, no, they weren't sandbagging. I'm guessing that it'll be after they get back from the Middle East that there will be a fix. I'm hoping at that anyway, because I also want to see Mercedes up there. And of course, the problem here is the next circuit is a very high-speed circuit, and therefore it's really likely to suit cars which have got good mechanical grip. So I don't think the Mercedes is going to be too good there either. So I'm not holding much hope for the next circuit.
That is funny because I can't remember if it was Russell. I think it was Russell because Lewis was kind of snarky about the old car. And he's the same guy which said, no, our team never make mistakes.
Mistakes,
and now it was just, no, the car is shit.
Yeah.
I think that Russell said something that on the line that their car supposedly is very good on high-speed corners, but not on low speed and in max speed. So we'll see if that's true. I mean, next week we'll see. Mm-hmm. We'll see if that's true.
Absolutely, it'll be more critical. And I just want to put this up here. GeoSam asks, are there any disadvantages to speak of with the new F1 design? Yes, Geo. It's a simple answer. Yes, and more yes. The car's heavier. It's harder to get around the slow corners. The top speeds are reduced because the drag seems to, from the ground effect, seems to be uncontrollable at the moment. So there are some major issues. The bigger wheels give a smaller turning circle, which is harder again. So there are many things on this car which are really hindering. Not to mention just the weight, for my money, being probably the most important. Fabio?
It's a different concept of cars. I mean, they get their downforce in areas where they were not using last year before the regulation. So I would say that the disadvantage is the size and the weight, as you said. But other than that, it's a different concept. So it's really difficult
Yeah,
to compare, the two cars.
yeah, that is very true. Disadvantages, yeah. Speaking of which, so it's difficult to say what are going to be advantages and what are going to be disadvantages. And really, it depends on the circuit as well, the type of track you're racing on. They can change as well.
One advantage that we saw last race is that apparently what they say that the car can follow each other closely for more time, it is actually true. So
yeah, I mean, really close. But again, noticeable
well,
when I think it was Albon, or no, yeah, Albon said, when you're a second back to a second and a half, it's just as bad as it used to be. I think that was proven true because getting within that second did seem quite difficult for some cars, at least without the DRS. Right?
oh yeah,
I'm thinking
the DRS is part of the deal anyway. So
yeah, but even when the DRS isn't working, you're getting extra slipstream, but you still can't get close enough to get it. That's what I mean by that. So yeah, it does seem that a second to a second and a half is very difficult still. That's still going to wear the tyres out, so cars are still not going to be able to get too close, I feel.
At least they get closer anyway, so I mean...
Once they are closer, no problem, they can stay there, yeah. So at least that's good. Okay, engine, Lucky says, engine has to be narrow as possible. Mechanical pumps make engines fat. Okay, maybe.
And then it says electric pump can go anywhere, and he is right. Most of the pumps in high performance engines, and that is true for F1 engines and motorcycle engine. I'm talking about MotoGP engines, stuff like that. They've all been moving, and this has been going on for years, to electric engines. So
yeah,
everything which used to be hydraulic, but even the oil pump or stuff like that, they are switching to electric pumps because the package is so smaller, and you only need a couple of wires instead of pressure pipes and stuff like that.
Bubby Elvis says the race was nice. Amazed at how close the racing was, and yeah, it looked great. Really, it's going to be real exciting on high downforce circuits as well. Basically, that's what that means. So I'm especially looking forward to that. I mean, Monza. Can you imagine what Monza's going to be like? Wow.
Imola too is going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of great circuits this year. And next circuit is, of course, the Saudi circuit, and that is very fast. So, it's going to be really exciting there as well.
I'm sorry. Can you start to imagine Spa with those cars?
Oh my God! With all those mid corners, high speed corners, I seriously, I really want Mercedes to sort at least the car to keep up, and at least have decent race pace, even if they don't have qualifying pace.
Talking about Spa, I mean, I know it's not the topic, but they have modified the Radillon Eau Rouge corner a little bit. So yeah.
Okay. GSM says large driver learning curves. It seems. Absolutely. Although amazingly, all the drivers seem to be managing quite well, and I think the reason is because of some of the similarities with the F2 cars. So yeah, hard to turn in, low mechanical grip at slow speeds, that kind of thing. So I think it's been easier to dial back the car performance, which seems to be less than last year, than it has been to jump up to a higher level. So I think that was some of the reasons. Go ahead.
There's also the fact that the drivers had to, I would say relearn to drive, but all of them they got to change their driving style, mostly because of the fact that the cars are way more rigid. so they're way more nervous. As I said, almost all
Yeah,
of them, the understeer, oversteer, and that snapping is way more sudden.
indeed.
So they have to adapt the driving style. So yeah, but
Hundred percent. Hundred
it's
percent. I think
that
it's
is
gonna.
part of the, sorry.
It'll definitely suit drivers that can keep the tires in with understeer.
Yeah.
So I think Perez and Sainz, I think Albon and Russell have all got really good chances because at least their tires should be conserved once their cars are sorted out. And I'm really surprised they're the drivers which, to my mind, really like understeer more than oversteer. So we'll see how that works. Bob Elvis says the area at the bottom plate goes over into the rest of the body is a bit ugly with a lot of the cars.
The area where the bottom plate goes over
Into
into
the
the
rest of the body.
rest of the...
I think he means like the little heel at the bottom of the underneath the nose.
So you mean the skid?
Yeah, the beginning of the skid. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean those are all areas which are defined by rules, and that part
Yeah.
of the skid is actually made of plywood with some magnesium inserts that they are the one which
Yeah.
they when you see the car bottoming and all the sparks, those are the magnesium inserts. And the reason why the magnesium inserts are there is because by rule they put that plywood thing because that's how they measure how much the car bottoms. By rule, that part cannot how do you say
Where? Where?
yeah, cannot wear so much. So the easiest way is you put something made of plywood and you measure at the end, and that is actually a very brilliant solution. And the magnesium part, they help not to make the plywood part touch too much. So that's why they're
Yeah. Okay, and the last one here. Ground effect cars like air moving as quickly as possible under the car. Yeah, absolutely. It's about the volume of the air passing under the car, which gives you your your downforce.
Yeah.
So either the quicker or the more volume, which is why I'm still surprised that people haven't at least worked on their side pods more, and then also given a higher rake again. I still think that would have been the way to go. But anyway, obviously I'm not an aerosist, so obviously I'm wrong.
I'm quite dubious about the rake. I mean, the way that the way that this car work right now, you got to have the car as flat as possible and as rigid as possible. So when you start putting some rake at the end, the whole bottom just loses efficiency. So they have to be flat, way more than the other year. Because again, last year I think they got only something like 30% of the downforce from the ground, and now it's more like 70. So
okay, but I just say they don't have to be flat, right? Because it is about volume of air passing under. However, if they don't seal the sides, right, then that drastically affects the downforce, and they're obviously the flatter you keep it, the easier it is to seal the side.
Right.
So you're going to pick up. So there is a trade-off there. That's all I'm saying. It's if you could get a higher rake and seal the sides, that would be a better solution because you would have necessarily air moving faster underneath your car and more of it. Okay. So that's all I mean to say.
No,
as a solution, this is a practical solution, but it may not be necessarily the best solution.
If you could do that, it would be fantastic. The problem is that the side of the car, they have only limited flexibility by rule.
Yeah.
So they cannot bend down, right? So because if they you could make a car with a high rake, and then you have something which really bends down, and you will be golden. But they can't. So the only way that they have to seal the bottom, they have the Venturi effect in the tunnels behind. And the way they seal the bottom, because they haven't got the skirts that you used to have in the 90s and the 80s, they use an effect that's called Coanda effect. Basically, it's the air which makes like a cushion, on the outside, more like an overcraft, but it's made of air, and that's what seals the bottom.
Yeah.
And you can hardly have. So it's a linear thing.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, you have to have the car really perpendicular to the track. So
Yeah.
because that, if not,
Agreed.
it doesn't work. But anyway.
Agreed. Okay. Just move on now, just quickly. Do you mind the cars slower this year if the racing is closer?
No, I don't.
No, likewise, I don't either. Lucky says, I'm not sure it's slower. It is actually slower, but not by too much. I think fastest lap on this circuit was like a 1:31, and last year it was a 1:28, late 1:28s. So it's probably less than a couple of seconds, which is actually less than they said, more than they said it was going to be. I mean, they said it was going to be not as close. So they said 3 seconds, and it's actually less than 2 seconds. So
and it's a couple of seconds for the first race, the first time they race those cars. I mean, they still have to properly understand the proper setup and stuff like that. So by the end of the year, I'm expecting the time to be very, very, very close, if not better than the times of last year.
Okay, Bubby Elvis says, did Verstappen notice that something was wrong with the car much earlier than Perez? I didn't hear Perez complain over the radio. I don't think Perez's engine problem happened until the very last one lap. He did say something on the radio, and then within half a lap, the car has stopped. Yeah. So no, there was nothing wrong with Perez's car right up until the last lap, basically. So there we go. This year's fastest lap. Hang on a sec. David Scarga says this year's fastest lap versus last year's fastest lap. Right, well, I just covered that as it goes. I think it was a 1:28, late 1:28s to a 1:31 mid. So you're about 2.5 seconds, or just over 2 seconds, actually. I thought it was just less, but it's about 2 seconds a lap. So, and as Fabio says, that's without too much work. Has the new F1 design brought about any safety concerns? Not as yet, actually, because the reason the cars are a lot of extra weight, or have a lot of extra weight this year, is because of extra safety features that they were adding in. So actually the reason the cars are much heavier this year is because of the new safety features. Will that change with the season?
If the protest against Mercedes is going to be successful. And car.
Will that? That's not going to happen. But yeah, will that change this season? The cars, as I say, Fabio said, yeah, it's likely to be, as the more they work on the cars, the closer and closer they get to last year's speed, and it won't be too long before they are actually there. I wouldn't have thought. Probably. Oh, traditionally, it's by the time we get back to Europe, that's when all of the teams bring all of their, their main upgrades to the cars during the season. Obviously,
yeah, I mean, keep in mind, for example, that last week on the same track, the cars were bouncing all over the place. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them were bouncing. And during the race, we saw way less bouncing, and the reason is because they went with way more conservative setups, which made the cars slower. Most of them, they just raised the car a little bit and stuff like that. So they made the car slower. So if it was 3 seconds with, again, cars, they don't really understand how, to make a proper setup, and they haven't, tuned up all the finicky things, I'm expecting, by the end of the season that the times will be way faster and closer to the lap records of last year.
All right. Lucky Wolf says the lap record is a 1:31 from 2005. Yeah. So, okay. I'm not sure. Quite often these to do with tires. I think the 1:28 was pole time, wasn't it? Last year. So maybe. Yeah, I think but it says lap record is 1:31. Is that right?
Keep him. He might be right. Because I might remember incorrectly, but I think that the lap record is the lap that you make in the race, not in the qualifying.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It was a race lap, yeah.
So, yeah, but he might be right.
There is such thing as an outright lap record as well, so maybe you're right. But again, I'm not sure. I heard somebody in commentary say a 1:28 something was Lewis's time last year. So I don't know though.
I forgot to say. I mean, now that you mentioned the
We'll
guy,
find.
I'm so happy to see that the guy's finally got some luck. I mean, Lewis. I mean, come on. I'm so relieved that finally he's got lucky. Because yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
never been lucky at any time, anywhere. So yeah, good for him. Yeah.
He says Dolorosa had the race record,
Ah, De La
131.
Rosa.
So
Yeah.
fair enough, fair enough. Thank you, Lucky, for putting that in chat for us. Okay. In which case, yeah, I think we're going to expect the cars to at least go faster than last year. Then I would have thought, certainly by the mid-season anyway. But we'll see how that goes. Okay. Thank you so much for that. We're going to move on now to our special part. We, of course, sent Peter last week to testing, and we've let him upgrade his hotel. So hopefully he's spent the money on the hotel and not hookers. Let's find out where he is. We're over to Pit Peter in Bahrain. Hello, I hope you didn't have any sheep land on your head, sir.
No. Actually, I had money to spend. Um, as you well
Really?
said. Yeah. Well, I looked at your facts, and yeah, I spent it on the princess, which was
You
nice.
spent it on Princess Mia Khalifa.
I mean,
An inside joke for Bahrain royal family
if
there.
if you
Oh,
if you have the chance, I mean, why not? I mean, just saying. Uh,
yes, of course. Yeah.
yeah, and well,
Okay. Go ahead anyway,
yeah.
Peter.
I
How
mean,
did you find the race? Anything outstanding? What did you notice being there?
there were a few things that I had noticed. There were also a few things that I had already noticed before, long before the race. Actually, when the season started, um, most noticeable was the ghost, and I haven't any of you two heard mention the ghost that was in the race. Did you not notice
No, I didn't. I didn't hear that. Was it? Was it a ghost contacted by Steve McRae on his Ouija board?
that one?
No. Okay. The ghost. That's okay. Yeah. Again. Sorry, dudes. Now remember what we said about this.
Well, no.
Punchlines,
I
Peter.
mean, we're back. We're back in Bahrain. We get a safety car, and then during the safety car, the call is made that lap cars may overtake, which were 6 cars. Remember the number 6? 6 cars from last race in Bahrain?
I remember. I only remember 3 of them overtaking.
No. Last race, there were 6 cars who were allowed to overtake, which were the 6 in between Max and Sir Lewis. So that was kind of funny, having the same thing literally happen again. And this time to the disadvantage of Max Verstappen, funny enough. But, I mean, there's a lot more to say. So, first of all, Sir Lewis, who absolutely has a special place in Formula One. Another thing you might not have noticed, because if we look at the track parade, we see the drivers, and we see that Sir Lewis has a special place, just a bit higher up from the rest. And I mean, it's how
Oh yeah.
it's how I
He's in the
behave.
celebrity area.
Yeah,
I can see that.
it is pretty much how I
Yeah,
behave at parties too. I mean, special place. Not
that was the only time and the only way that he had to be ahead of all these guys. Yeah, so yeah, he did well.
the, the okay. Then we have to go to well, on the grid, obviously, and someone captured it. Lewis standing on the grid, looking next to him, and someone captured it like this. What the fuck is he doing here? He was next to Lewis on the grid, the butler. Um, Another fun thing to notice. What I noticed is Toto Wolf, and that was this, and someone captured that on Twitter with George. Mum said it's my turn to sit in the car. I actually like that part. Then we have to go to. Did any of you notice the marshals? None of you?
No. Sorry. Knock knock. Who's there? No.
No. So the marshals, for the marshals, they went to Great Britain and they studied the plumbers closely, and yeah, they now have a crack of a marshal from the UK. Apparently, this was during Formula 2.
Yeah, that I can see. That was obviously a big incident.
That was a big incident. Well, and then obviously I have to say it, the constructor standings. Third, Haas. Who would have expected that?
Brilliant.
Yeah,
I mean,
Brilliant.
fucking brilliant.
and then we also have to look lower down, at the bottom, Red Bull. AlphaTauri did manage to hang on to 6, but I don't. Everyone was surprised that they didn't finish, whereas I wasn't, because have you noticed the new Red Bull team name?
No. Knock knock. No.
No,
Jesus.
you have to be faster. Come on, Red
Well,
Bull.
come on. I mean,
I'm
Yeah.
muted. I'm muted. I'm doing
Yeah.
something else. Getting the next
Yeah,
bit
no,
ready.
no,
while
you
you're
can't do
supposed to be
something
singing
else.
in.
You're on a broadcast. So it's Red Bull
Okay, go
Racing RBPT. And we all know what
Yeah.
RBPT stands
Yeah.
for.
We
Right?
do, yes.
Yeah.
Well, those that looked into it, yeah.
Yeah, really bad powertrain.
Go. Really bad powertrain. There you go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, well,
Okay.
and then there was the thing with the intro. So we have a new intro for this year. I did get a suggestion from someone from the UK, a guy who claimed that he was famous with, I don't know, some kind of car show on the BBC that ended after he slapped someone. But I did want to show that because he did post it in a DM to me on Twitter. So this is the alternative Formula One intro.
Tonight, a Monegasque screams in Italian, a Dutchman screams in English, and a Viking makes a comeback.
Okay, that was my part. That was what I noticed and what people sent me.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much indeed for that, Peter. And obviously, yeah, what did you think of the race?
I'm really happy to see that some of the back teams are now able to compete with the rest. That was pretty much the main part that I thought was really brilliant. I
Okay.
mean, seeing Haas in there, seeing the Alphas uh, mixing in, it is nice to see that at least we've got some closer racing. At the start, I mean, you had two groups. The one group got ahead, and then back there you had an entire group fighting, which I thought was brilliant. It's not that it's going to be stretched out as much, and I hope that over the course of the year, because everyone's going to be improving, I hope it'll still be close and we can still see, because we could have some flukes and have some of the lower teams actually get up on the podium, which I think would be brilliant for once. I mean, we,
Yeah, it's a possibility, of course. And you know, what I was actually disappointed about was the pace race, front to back. I thought was just too big. It hasn't closed up that much in terms of back of the field to front of the field. In fact, if anything, it's the top two teams which have stolen a huge margin. Ferrari and Red Bull have at least a second in race pace over the rest of the field, and that's just huge. So I think we are going to be seeing a lot of lapping cars, etc., etc. So you know, disappointing in the first race. I feel that even with such a careful, or even with such a relatively, you know, like clean race, we still had many cars being lapped. And that's the same as last year, so I don't think anything's changed there. However, we'll just have to wait and see if the other cars can improve and bring themselves up to Red Bull and Ferrari's pace. If not, then it's still going to be exciting because at least the top two teams are really close with each other.
I mean, I actually have to agree with Peter here. I think that there was a mix-up in the in the other in the second part of the group, and seeing new names. I mean, I thought it was quite exciting. There is also the fact I just hope that everybody has got a proper development program, especially teams like us and stuff like that. They can keep on, pushing and keep, getting better. I mean, it was to be expected that, that the better teams would have been ahead anyway. Actually, if you want to put it like that, it was quite astonishing to see Mercedes so back, going so back. So the fact that these rule apparently in the first race, and we got to hope that the budget cap really works in that direction. The fact that you can have teams that they didn't. I mean, Haas last year didn't get any points and they got 10, and they were battling with Alpha for points, and the Mercedes were not that far. So it is quite exciting. I mean, I agree with you. It's the same races. I mean, the best teams and the best cars are still ahead. There are best cars which are still ahead, but this was to be expected unless you go with a concept like the IndyCar or stuff like that, where the chassis and the engines are more or less the same, and then you can have that kind of races. But still, I mean, I personally don't like them, so I'd rather see this. I think this is a good compromise, and I think that this race was very good for the new rules as far as we see. We'll see how it goes, during the year, with the teams developing and stuff like that. So,
well,
I think this is what Peter was trying to say.
Yeah, I'm hoping at least that we at the end of this year we won't have a team with 0 points at the end of the season, because I think that's really tragic. And I'm just thinking of the people who are working on the teams. I mean, everyone should at least have a shot at getting some points, and it looks like that might be possible because, as I said, it is a bit closer in the cars that weren't really doing well in previous seasons. So, and
although of course they did say from the beginning of the season that they wouldn't be developing the car, and Formula One is a development race amongst other things. So there you go. That's what you expect. But nonetheless, it's really good to see that all of the teams that were at the back last year have had a good start to the season. There's no doubt about that. It seems like the Ferrari powertrain is at least back, if not better, than the other cars, and that bodes really well because we know that the Mercedes cars will get themselves together. It just might take a bit of time. Okay, so basically that's that. Let's just say one little thing. I think I saw Gunter Steiner nearly smile after the race. Yeah, he. Someone said he only used swear words which were expressing joy. So I think that was something which was quite amazing considering. He was also hugging one of his drivers. So that is also quite amazing for Gunter Steiner.
Yeah.
So,
I love the team radio.
I think that the drivers were quite scared when they hugged them, because usually when Gunther Steiner goes to the driver, it's not for hugging, it's to kill them. So that was a nice change of pace.
I love his radio to Magnussen at the end of the race. Fucking Viking comeback. I mean,
yeah, there you go.
Probably the most bleeped piece of radio, because the amount of times they said fuck and fucking in that particular team radio.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean it's just really boding well for the rest of the season. The first race. Normally we can't say anything, or usually you can't draw any conclusions about the first race mainly because it's in Australia. But and that track's just not very nice. But nonetheless, you can this year say, at least we can say something from the beginning of what we've seen the cars this year about from the first race. And I think given the nature of the second track we're going to, which is Saudi, I think we will have a good understanding of what the rest of the year is going to be like. From now on, I feel everything is down to the development of the cars. And that's just, scary, because, of course, one of the better teams at developing the car traditionally has been Adrian Newey's team of Red Bull. So, I think although it's a great start for the season because Red Bull didn't finish, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be dominating yet. And we'll have to wait a few more races to find out. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm going to end the show there.
One
Thank
more
you
thing.
for,
One more thing.
Yeah. Go ahead, Peter. Do you want to just give an outro? Yeah.
No. I just saw that just before we went live. I hadn't noticed it before. Formula One is now saying that they're not relying on tradition anymore when it comes to tracks. If they want to stay part of the Formula One season, they have to step up and do more than just be there because of tradition. What do you guys think of that?
Sure.
And which circuit?
I did not understand what you say. They're not relying on what?
The traditional
Tradition.
circuits that we have in Formula One, they're not guaranteed a place in the season anymore. They have to do more than just organize the race. They have to step up their game, which I haven't seen the entire press message yet. But that could mean that some.
I think we'll reserve judgment on that. But of course, that's normally bullshit. How many times have we heard exactly that message come from Formula One, Bernie Ecclestone especially, trying to barter for more money from their circuits? And some circuits just don't have it, as we found out. They've already spent the millions that they have invested or borrowed to invest in the tracks just so Formula One can be there. So no, I really don't think so. And if you really want to keep the sport up to date, then of course the one thing you don't want to do is piss your existing fans off to the point. And I can tell you, if Monza is not on the calendar, I'm probably not going to be watching Formula One.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. I'm sorry, that's just how it is.
You're right. I mean, I can say the same with Silverstone, not because of retaliation, but he's right. I mean, there's some places like, Spa, Silverstone, Monza. I mean, they have to be there. I mean,
Monza. I mean, grazie amigo tifosi. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. Any last words for the people?
No. I mean, let's see what happens next week.
Yeah, Bernie played Silverstone and Brands off for years. You're absolutely right, Lucky.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he did, and not just that circuit or those circuits. But anyway, there you go. More parking space, more burgers, more toilets.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's an endless circle. Peter, anything you'd like to just finish up with, or
no,
they're
just,
good? Saudi in a week's time.
Yeah, Saudi in a week's time, and for me, there's a lot of work because Formula One changed all the graphics, so I'm hoping to get some new graphics for the show as well, and that will pretty much evolve over the year, so we see new stuff.
Okay, great. So thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Great to have you here. And I'll just say once again, of course, grazie amico tifosi. Me ne butto. Grazie mille a tutti. Ragazzi. Very many Italian pizza. Okay. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.